Today's speaker is Dan Wei, who is a scholar in residence here at the Chair in Transgender Studies, and she's a lecturer at Nanchang University in China. Topic is cross-gender performance and transgender issues in China. So she is sponsored in her visit by the China Scholarship Council and is interested in gender inequality and transgender issues in China. And she's doing research on cross-gender performance in Chinese theater, transgender history, politics, and activism in China. So, cross-gender performance and transgender issues in China. Dan Wei, please join me in welcoming.
Thank you, Dr. Edwin Duval. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Dan Wei, and I'm going to talk about cross-gender performance and transgender issue in China. And I'm from Nanchang University, and as you can see in the map, we are here is Victoria, and here is Nanchang, and it's in southeast in China. And today I will mention 4 parts of transgenderism in Chinese history, and the first part will be cross-gender performance in history before 1949, because 1949 is the year when New China began. And the next part will be mixed caste performance and politicizing dressing from 1949 to 1978, because 1978 is the year when China began to use the open door policy. And the third part will be pathologization and conceptualization and reconceptualizing transgenderism as 2001 celebrate, because on this year and Chinese mental illness began to depologizing of transgenderism. And the last will be legalization and activism of transgender. First, I would like to talk about cross-gender performance in history. China has a long tradition of opera history, dating back well over 1,000 and even more longer. And we have more than 360 kinds of opera, and many of them have cross-gender performance, and it plays significant role in Chinese opera. As you can see in the picture, these 2 are cross-gender performance, and this is the famous program Farewell My Concubine, and this picture is Butterfly Lover. Cross-gender performance was actually have existing since the Tang Dynasty, which is about 618. Male to female performance, the earliest was Wei Empire, make his 2 favorite play act like play devil women. But during that time, it's just kidding, playing is not so popular in public. But when the big face story come out, it became a public masculine dance. So I would like to introduce the big face story. Prince Lanning is a very brave prince, and he's good at battering, but he has a feminine look. So worry maybe his face are not masculine enough to scare the enemy. So each time when he engaged in the battle, he will wear a mask. So people then develop a public masculine dance. That's the early cross-dressing performance. But the most famous male to female performance is in Beijing Opera. Beijing Opera was born around 1790s, which has have more than 200 years. Because the Beijing Opera topic is about battles, wars, and also some class conflict and life stories. So it soon became very popular. And the rise of Beijing Opera to its maturity in the last quarter of 19th century. And its dominance and sequence 100 years, and the male to female performance are quite extremely high file. So in this picture came from the movie Farewell My Concubine, played by Leslie Cheung. He's from Hong Kong. He's a very famous actor. And four great dance is worth mention about, because they are not only most famous performers, male to female performance, but also they had great contribution to Beijing Opera, and each of them have their distinct performance style. As you can see in this picture, that's their performance photos, and each one they are good at playing different female role. As Mei Lanfang is good at playing young beauty, and Sang Xiaoyun is good at playing elderly women role, and some of them are good at playing like female soldiers. So female soldiers. So they even developed their own school of performance. But during this performance, they are not only wearing fancy dress, they were singing, and they were prayed how to be loyalty, how to be gentle, and it's a kind of very, very interesting thing. But the Mei Lanfang is in its most famous. He became a national icon during the 1930s. And he even performed Beijing Opera to Soviet Union, Japan, Europe, and United States. So he's the one who is very important in international cultural exchange. And also he brings some innovations of Beijing Opera. He even used Italian opera and some dialogue opera to mix into the Beijing Opera and make the Beijing Opera to his head date at the 1930s to 1940s. And there's two famous movie about this issue, and they both have English version. The first one is Butterfly. It's actually based on true story about a French diplomat fell in love with the performance, and after 20 years, he find out actually the performer have a male body. And the other one is Farewell My Concubine. It's talk about the performance Leslie performed. He's a male to female performer. He fall in love with the male character, and that's about the Beijing Opera's develop and what's going on during the half century of 19th century. And the other one is female to male performance, and the earliest recorded instant female to male performance found in 8th century in Tang. And among all those opera, Yue is most famous for his female playing roles as young male scholar. And you can see in the picture here, she is the most famous female to male performer. Her name is Meng Xiaodong, and people name him Empire Dong. Why they call her Empire Dong? Because when he performed, his voice is deep, and he moving, his gesture are just exactly like the empire. So people call her Empire Dong. And Yue Opera is famous for his female playing roles as a young man scholar. During those Ming and Qing dynasty, when men were enjoying the performance in public, and female have to enjoy the performance in private performance. Here is the most famous program in Yue Opera. It calls The Butterfly Lover. The Butterfly Lover is talk about a story about because in Asian China, female is not allowed to go to public school, so Zhu cross-dressing as a boy to go to school. And during the 3 years in the school day, she fell in love with the Liang, but Liang didn't know she's a female. So after they graduate from school, they come back to hometown, and the Zhu's family have arranged her marriage to a wealthy family. So but actually she loved Liang, so she wrote a letter to Liang, please come to propose me, because I have to marry to another wealthy. But the family have arranged, and the decision cannot be changed. So it ended up both of them died of missing each other too much. And people put a happy ending. They became two butterfly, and they can be together forever. So that's the Butterfly Lover story. And female to male performance, but compared to male to female performance, female to male performance are always silent, and even the lesbian is silent in Chinese history, because in traditional China, female has lower status in Chinese history. So why there's high file of cross-dressing performance? There are several reasons. The first one will be federal rights and gender culture, because in Asian China there's quite severe gender segregation, and women are not allowed to go to the public opera, and they are not allowed to perform in public. So that's the important reason. And the other will be family order. In China culture is high tolerance of homosexual, because homosexual actually is not ruining family order. They were not require marriage. It will not ruin family order. So it's quite high tolerance, and female status are lower. And the other one will be the cross-gender performance is a kind of higher level of performance ability. You have to break through all the physical limitation, and also you need to do more exercises and practice, and also maximize the masculine and feminine for better performance. Because when I mentioned someone was good at playing female soldier, and they can do quite brave, and they played weird character of soldiers. And also the young scholar man playing by the female is quite gentle, and lots of female would like to see that. And the other one will be, because the theater and the opera is a field without gender boundary. It's a place when you can break down all the gender rules, all the gender barriers. It's a place for people to have a dream, and place for enjoy the art and culture. So that's the reason why cross-gender performance is quite common, it's quite unique in Chinese history. And the second, I would like to mention miscast performance and politicizing dressing. After New Chinese began, at the beginning, the government would like to encourage people to make films like cross-dressing. The most famous one is The Butterfly Lover, because they consider it as a good quality, it's a good movie, it's a good story to encourage people to fighting against federal family oppression. Because in traditional China, individuals have no right to choose their marriage partner. They have to be arranged by the family. But during Cultural Revolution, the cross-gender performance are done for because they think it's a kind of further legacy, and they call for miscast performance. And the other I would like to mention is universal military uniform. There's one saying, female can do everything that males can do. That's our first president Mao said, and he also taught women that you have to love military uniform, not dress. So as you can see in the pictures, everybody wear the same colors and the same dress. So we call it politicizing dressing. And during this section, transgenderism was silent in reality because coming out was dangerous during the Cultural Revolution. And if someone will find out cross-gender or they are transgender, they would be have to engage in labors and get re-education, and also sometimes will be denounced in public. So it's a kind of dangerous thing. And the third stage will be from 1978, because this is the year China have reformed and began the open door policies, and they want to catch up the modern technology, and they would like to learning from Western countries. So modernity with gender reassignment surgery in medical science developed during this section, and gender reassignment surgery research and technology, especially at good in Shanghai Hospital and Beijing Hospital. Lots of research and technology and techniques was done, and they put into developed to a high level. And celebrity makes gender reassignment surgery known by public. So I would like to mention like famous people. The first one is Zhang Kershaw, but few people know her because after her transition, he moved to Hong Kong. He didn't want to be known, to be interviewed, because during that time, China are not open-minded enough, and people knew nothing about transgender, and he may receive lots of criticism. So he tried to move to Hong Kong and marry in Hong Kong in 1990s. Someone write her story, and until 2005, Zhang Kershaw came out to sign the book. The book is about dream to be a woman, first male to female in China. But actually, she's not the first one. The other one I would like to mention is Jing Xin. Jing Xin born in military family. She's very famous. Everybody know her. She graduated from Army Art Academy and studied modern dance in New York. Then he did surgery in 1995 and changed document, changed ID, and became a modern dancer. And also, she has lots of TV shows. So You Think You Can Dance and Jing Xin Show and Chinese dating, all these programs. So everybody in China knows Jing Xin, and also they know, and they know he's trans woman. So Jing Xin makes the transgender surgery known by public. And also he married a German guy and have adopted 3 kids. Well, at the first, people mentioned Jing Xin was, she's a trans woman. But now people will mention Junxin, oh, she's a famous modern dancer, she's a most famous, successful woman in China. So people change. And during this area, there's still some pathologization and stigma. And homosexual is on the diagnostic list of mental illness, and they mix the sexual orientation and gender identity. And it's a kind of, when people talk about this issue, it's a kind of mental disease, abnormal, and we mentioned in patients and should be hearing something like that. But during this section, there's another act is hooliganism. It's a law began in 1978. Actually, this kind of crime refers to a crime of disregard of national law or social morality, fighting, insulting women, or other stuff. But sometimes it just used as the law to seize and arrest gay people. So in 1997, the National People's Congress abolished this law. This is thing as a big step in the LGBT issues in China. During this period, there's a lot of translations and also articles talking about this issue, and the addressing transgender identity was imported and translated into Chinese, like cross-dresser and transsexual and transgender. But they also reconceptualizing it, because like when we talk about pre-surgery trans, we would like to use self-identity male or self-identity female, or male-female in the other body, or male-female with a female or male heart. So that's a kind of different words for that. The pioneer surgeon He Qinglian started to diagnose homosexual and transgender as an illness in 1992. So we call it 异性癖, which means transsexualism, in 1992. The emergence of sex reassignment surgery contributed to the pathologization of transgenderism. So after that, heating debate between transgenderism and cultural values and social orders and legal issues. So in 2001, according to Chinese classical and diagnostic criterion of mental disorder, 3 edition, which to some extent to echoes with international classifications of disease, 10th edition. So in this section, homosexual sexuality and bisexuality in themselves are not seen like disease or abnormal. They explain that that's normal things. They are not mental disease, but they still using some words like transsexualism and cross-dresser. They are still listed on the gender psychological disorder categories. So the last part begins from 2001. The government have a regulation governing alteration of gender makers. It's about how to get the gender makers change. So there's lots of you have to fulfill all these requirements, then you can get your gender change. The first one, you have to have a formal written, and the other one, you have to get a household registration book, which is quite important in China, because you need when you buy a house, when you go to school, you need that, because they have some information of your family. That's the way in China when governments manage the population. And the third one, you need a certificate of gender reassignment surgery. And the fourth, a notice of permission of document from human resources of the instructions or the schools. So that's the one of the regulation. And in 2008, there's another regulation. Most of them are the same, but they remove the fourth one. They don't need this one. And also, this regulation is a kind of react to people who do the surgery abroad. So they try to change into a certificate of gender authentications issued by domestic territorial 24 hospital. When you come to the formal version, is a certificate of surgery, which have to be done in domestic hospital, but they change. You have to, you have the certificate of her surgery of a boy. You carry this document to local domestic hospital to get a certificate of gender authentications. But actually, this kind of stuff is hard to get because some of the hospitals say, sorry, I can't do that. We don't have the quality to do that. And it's how to do that from DNA, but the DNA will not show you have to do a surgery. So many of them just have lots of difficulty to get their gender maker change. Only 1% of trans people got their document changed. And so this is the first open trans man in China, and he got her ID change called Genzi. But how many people does the alteration of gender makers matter? There's a rough estimate. There's about 400,000 people in China, and only 800 transgender have do surgery according to the hospital records. And there's another surveys, and we can see here there's 2,060 people do the survey, and about trans men is about 30.9, and trans women 33.7. So that's quite a lot of people. So why does the alteration of gender makers matter? Because in China, you have to use them everywhere, like renting a place to live. Even when you go to hotel to check in, and you take a train by plane, and you need to get married, and you need to apply for social insurance and individual property ownership, all this stuff, you need that. For some people, it's very embarrassing, and they always be questioned about their document, their ID cards, truth or fake, so they're quite a big deal. But how to get the ID change? You have to do the surgery, and there's some regulations about how to do the gender reassignment surgery. And there's two versions, and the latest one will be 2017. You have to be more than 20, and immediate family members' consent. And also you have to get a no criminal record, and you have to get a psychiatry or psychology certificate, and you have to notary verified written request of the surgery. You have to be not married, and requirement for gender assignment is having had a consistent gender identity for at least 5 years. And you have to prove that pre-operation psychological and psychiatric treatment for more than 1 year and have no change gender identity. So if you want to go to the hospital to have this surgery, you have to provide all the proof and document. And when we compare to the former version, in 2009 version has another requirement. You have to be heterosexual sexual after gender change. But they changed. The government try to know, and they already know the big difference between sex orientation and gender identity. And also they changed the terms from sex change to gender reassignment. That's when they have a big movement about this issue. But it's still very difficult to get all this stuff, because you have to persuade your family to consent, and they have to sign for you to do the surgery. The need for people to return to their hometown to alter is a kind of quite a lot of community pressures to people. So it's a kind of hard thing to get all this documentary. There's another survey done by Work for LGBT Association, and we can see in the bar chart the most anxieties come from their family pressures. It's quite a high rate, and the other one will be the coming out and stigma, and also the legal recognitions, and also employee discriminations in China. So why are people? It's difficult in China because there are huge family pressures. Because in Chinese culture, there's have some philosophy. They are both important philosophy. The first one is family harmony. You have to, family is always the most important things in China. And also you have to feel the pity, and also the descendants will be important. So if you are not married, you have to marry, and you have to have children. After that, Chinese environment are tolerance. But before you marry, you suffer a huge family pressures from that. So many of LGBTQ members, they married, just pretend they are family, but actually they live in a double life, which means they are not love with their partner, but just because they want to get rid of all these pressures from the society, from the family. There's another policy, it's called one-child policy. Well, one-child policy actually have double-sided impact. One impact is if your family have only one child, you suffer more pressures from family, because they want to depend you to carry the family name, so it's a great pressure. But there are some other impacts, positive impact, because the family members, they don't want to lose their children. So some of the parents, they just became activists. So there's one very famous mother, we call her Mother Wu, and her son is a gay, and he come out and to give lectures in the university, in a community, and she talked to many parents about how to deal with these issues. So people in LGBT groups, they called her Mother Wu, and also she has a book, Rainbow My LGBT Activism. So she's the family member. And the other one I would like to mention is Li Yinghe. Li Yinghe is a famous sociologist, and she is a professor in Chinese University, and during 2000, 2004, 2006, 2007, she petitions to the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference to try to legalize same-sex marriage in China, but didn't success. So same-sex marriage is still not legal in China. Li Yinghe is a sociology professor whose ex-husband is a very famous writer, died of heart attack. After that, she living with a trans man for more than 20 years. Well, I like to mention Li Yinghe because she's famous for his influential books like Sex Life, Homosexualities, and in China. And also she wrote one article, I'm Not Lesbian, and she wrote in Xinlang Weibo, like Facebook here, and a popular social media. And she educates people what's the difference between sex orientation and gender identity. Most members learn the difference through her article. And there are some, actually, because Li Yinghe's partner actually has not done the bottom surgery, so he cannot get the documentary ID card changed, so they cannot get married. That's why the professor each year will write a proposal to try to make legal in same-sex marriage. So when we talk about marriage rights, because we have lots of family pressure, so what about trans men or trans women's marriage rights? There's one case in 2001. G signed an agreement with Hospital A, and she wanted to do the surgery without requiring a divorce. According to the marriage law, during that time, there was no need to divorce for married people who want to do the surgery, because the earliest version is in 2002, so it's not also she's success. But in November 2008, it's a trans woman from Hong Kong. She applied to marriage from the local government, but rejected by the local government. After several years struggle and fight empowerment, on May 13, 2013, and she finally got to win the case, so she can marry. That's the story. And the other one will be the employment rights. Mr. C case. Mr. C was fired by his company because he refused to wear dress. So she sued the company, and finally he success. He won the case. But actually in China, you want to get a job, it's quite difficult because you have to have your degree. But there's actually, the government actually have no specific about how to change the education degree certification, because there's no policy about that. So university, they don't know how to do it. So that's one things that made the life quite difficult. There are some other movement or some development on into Chinese activism. This is the legal gender recognition in China, legal and policy reviews in 2018, and they actually explain many of the terms in this field, and they explain the sexual orientation, sexual affirming surgery, legal gender recognition, LGBTI, intersex, and transgender, transsexual, and they also introduce double path. And also, the government have actually authorized and funded grassroots organization to carry out HIV educations and prevention outreach programs across the nation since 2006. Currently, all the expense and surgery fees are not cannot be covered by neither public health in surgery or commercial medical insurance. So and also there's no policy about how to get the hormone. So that's the still a stackle for LGBT groups. So when we go through all these people I have talked about, we would like to mention, actually, when I say Zhang Kershaw is not actually the first trans women in China, because Hong Kong has first gender assignment surgery was in 1981, but he chose to be invisible. And Zhang Kershaw is actually at the beginning of her 20 years, he tried to be invisible until 2004 or 2004. She tried to be visible and tried to come out. And Jinxin's image from first visible trans woman to successful human being. And Miss C's case, and Mother Wu and Professor Lin He. These are people who choose to be brave enough to be visible in China, but they are suffered a lot of pressures and criticism, but they did great contribution in Chinese transgenderism. So that's what I would like to share today. But there's still a long way for China to movement the transgenderism. Thank you all for coming.